The show is finally here! I actually didn't realize it was here until I saw the words Hitch episode on EQD with a 3D screenshot I'd never seen. And I was like, wait a second, what? So I binged all 8 episodes and it was alright. Definitely not world-endingly bad like some Doom posters are saying. I found a lot of it enjoyable, but it still isn't what it should be in a lot of aspects. So let's go over them. I think it was on Brony's React that I heard this, but someone said that FIM's intro is the girliest thing about it. And yeah, it was something, that's for sure. But at least it had charm. It was mellow, cozy, and inviting, which reflected the show's tone at least. Make your marks intro? Honestly, as soon as I heard the first few seconds, I skipped it. I actually only watched it for the review's sake, and I'm never watching it again. I remember thinking, geez, this song is kind of lame when I first heard it in the special, and yes, I admit, it's out there for the world to see, that I did like it, at least like the lyrics, but when I found it was the show's actual theme and not just an opener for the special, I was pretty disappointed. I mean, the My Little Pony theme is pretty iconic. It goes back how many years? So why replace it? You could just update it. Keep the melody and stuff, add new lyrics if you want, but keep the theme song the theme song. And if you're gonna replace it, at least make it, not generic. That brings me to the music. Friendship is Magic songs are almost like a mix between indie and pop, in my uneducated musical opinion. But they were charming. They had character and fit the personality of the show, and most of all, they were unique. The songs in Make Your Mark are soulless and corporate. Kinda like the animation, actually. So I guess they do fit the show. You know what they remind me of? That shitty Wish ad that I always see on YouTube. God, I wish I had ad block on the Xbox. I think I've skipped every single song in the show. I cringe too hard. And I'm not just saying this in a sense of, lol, cringe, lol, so cringe. I mean, I get a feeling of secondhand embarrassment, and it's uncomfortable to watch. And I know people are tired of reviews that just boil down to new thing bad, everyone despair, and I promise you I'm not gonna make another one of those. But I'm not gonna sugarcoat my opinions just to be a counterbalance. When it's bad, I'm calling it bad. The songs are bad, and episode 1 is pretty bad too. It feels like a filler episode, and it's episode 1. I get the movie and the special were basically pilots, but this is the literal first episode of season 1. It should be better. Izzy's voice actress is not a good fit. Just 2.5 minutes in, we get this gem.
I didn't get to finish my amazing birthday tower of friendship for Sunny.
And again, for those who don't know, I've watched Tell Your Tale. I've had time to get used to the new voice actress. But still, she's awful. This delivery just sucks megaballs. I'm not a professional VA by any means. This is my only experience, and I'm entirely self-taught, so I probably make a ton of mistakes I don't realize. Apparently, Anasani, I don't know, Izzy's VA has a pretty long resume of doing kids' TV, and The Boys, apparently. That's quite the outlier. Obviously, she's experienced, not just voice acting, but acting in general. I'd chalk this up to poor directing or editing.
Friendship for Sunny.
God, what a dismal introduction to the show. One other small thing I noticed is how the second episode, when Hitch outlaws magic, is set up when Hitch says he doesn't like how crazy Earth Pony magic is. It's tiny and easy to miss, but that's what makes it good foreshadowing. It shows the writers are putting thought into making the characters consistent, and it sets up his later crusade. There are other little character moments, like when Izzy says, it was a bracelet, but she put it in her mane, so it's that now. That's such an Izzy thing to say. And Sunny with a giant strawberry in the background in that scene is actually pretty funny. One thing I immediately noticed is that the animations, while still a little awkward and janky at times, have improved a little. The improvements are all very subtle, but when you're looking for them, you can tell they're there, but they're easy not to notice, and that's good, because that means they aren't standing out anymore. Just in that scene, Izzy makes this expression, and it's great. Even when she's on her tower, her movement was fairly smooth. I like how they actually use their ears to convey expressions. Those subtle bits of body language are where the 3D really shines, so it's nice to see that taken advantage of. Yet, there are still some rather gnarly moments there too, but still, it's not horrendous or anything. Now I get how it might put some people off. I mean, I don't like it either. I'd wish they'd stayed with 2D, but I don't think it's fair to really kick up a fuss about it. Because the artists are trying their best with what they have, and ultimately, it comes down to budget. And there's just no getting past that. So, let's just say, it doesn't look all that great, and move on. In episode 1, we see some pretty good Hitch and Zip moments, and I particularly like how Zip shares her investigation with him a bit. I wish they did more of that. What I don't like is this little bastard. God, is he ever annoying! I hate his stupid little gargling sounds. He looks a bit like a chew toy or a rubber ball, and maybe that's why I have such a strong desire to kick his stupid little head and throw him at a wall. He looks like something you'd catch in Sea of Thieves and then fry for a health boost. And his stupid name alone is worth blending him for. I like how the show is self-aware, just like Friendship is Magic was. You can see that with how Zip looks at Hitch after he says Sparky Sparkeroni. Oh god, saying it out loud is even worse than hearing it. And she's kind of like, what did you just call him? And that eye roll too, oh man, that's exactly how I felt. This is the show team's way of saying, yeah, we know it's kind of dumb, but hey, it's for the kids, what can you do? And I think that goes to show how, while it's still very much for the kids, they're gonna put stuff in for older audiences too. Misty planting the mirror was really the only major plot development that happened in this episode. That and the explanation of how Izzy got her cart, which probably should have happened in Tell Your Tale. Now I get that MLP has largely been episodic in nature and that for the most part each episode is like a self-contained slice of life story. And that's perfectly fine. I actually like that. But given that this will have been the first episode people have seen in a while, I would have liked something a bit more exciting, maybe with more focus on Misty. All the backstory we get to help understand Misty is terribly unsubtle exposition from Opaline. That, and the knowledge that she doesn't have a cutie mark. It would have been better to save that part of Misty's backstory for later, to build up curiosity for why Misty works for Opaline, and have it be a sort of exciting revelation later on. However, once again, they throw in a good piece of dialogue when Misty acts if the cloaking enchantment around the Bright House is like the one that was put around Equestria. The discussion of a magic bubble around Equestria is only brought up much later, so this setup being so far in advance is pretty admirable for this show. It can also offer some explanation as to why Equestria seems so small now. Maybe that bubble only concealed a small portion of it, and outside the Bridlewood, Maritime Bay, and Zephyr Heights bubble, the rest of Equestria was unaffected by the split. Opaline could have placed the bubble over that region to make it into her own little dictatorship, or Twilight could have done it to keep Opaline's influence from spreading. I don't know, but it's an interesting concept. And hey, I predicted there would be some evil pony responsible for a war that split the tribes, and it was pretty close to what we got. So maybe I'll be right here too in some capacity, I don't know. Episode 2. Ooh, I like this one. It's about Hitch and was foreshadowed in episode 1, and it has Sprout too! And I like that Sprout makes a giant plant. It gives some actual explanation to his cutie mark. Plus, I actually like his new VA better than Ken Jeong. There's some pretty great character moments for Hitch, as we get to see him actually acting like a sheriff. A competent one, too. It also shows the contrast between him and Sunny. He likes order, rules, and caution, while Sunny is free-spirited, doesn't like being told what to do, and can be a little rash. I made these observations back in my rewrite of ANG, saying that these traits should have been used more, so to see them in the show makes me very happy. And then there's the Twilight Sparkle hologram. Oof. How she knew Earth Pony magic would be a thing? Dunno. I think it would have been better if she'd said, magic is more powerful than it's ever been, and you will be dealing with entirely new kinds of magic. It still shows that she knew there would be consequences, just not exactly what they would be. If she knew about Earth Pony magic, why wouldn't she know about dragon magic? This was also set up in episode 1. As much as I enjoyed the setup showing that the writers think ahead, I can't help but think this sort of epic reveal would have been a better first episode. I wonder how many bronies out there watched episode 1 and thought, so the writing is meh, the plot is uninteresting, the visuals are still pretty lame, and I'm out. Who would have stayed if this had been episode 1? Also, I want to note how it's Zip who yells, "Don't go!" at Twilight. I just think it's interesting that they gave that line to her and not Sunny. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, And I think it's kind of an interesting little character revelation for Zip. But it kind of feels like Sunny's becoming a background character in her own show. You know, Netflix has a pretty bad habit of doing that to their protagonists. Then there's Hitch's little monologue that Pip interrupts. That was pretty freaking good. And the way that Zip raised an eyebrow in the background and the look on her face when she walks away, that was just mwah. That's followed immediately by Opaline's "hooftastic isn't a word" rant, and then the maniacal laugh bit. That was pretty good too. Back to back great moments. This is what gives me hope for the show. However, I will note that they could have set that joke up better. Just having Misty comment on Opaline's hooves and say hooftastic in their previous scene. After the whole pout thing, she could have said, "And you have such a regal mane, and those horseshoes make your hooves look hooftastic." One more thing I want to mention about dragon magic is while its effect is different, it's still in kind of a similar vein to Spike's. He teleported things, Sparky transfigures things. We never got an explanation for why Spike could send letters with magic, and it was never stated that he had some rare ability either. For all we know, every dragon could have a unique magical ability related to their fire, or they could have multiple. Also, I want to point out at one point Sparky transforms a vegetable or fruit or something into a big rock, and then he starts to lick it. I take that to be alluding to Spike's love of gemstones. Episode 3 was another great one. Everything from Opaline and Misty's evil plot, to the interactions between Zip and Pip, Sunny's curiosity about the Pegasi customs, Queen Haven, all of it. Out of all the episodes, this one seemed most like something from FIM. I won't go into too much detail about it though, because really it speaks for itself. Just go watch it. The only disturbance to an otherwise great episode is how Pip is on her phone, acting like an influencer. As everyone knows, influencers are reprehensible and sufferable subhuman degenerates, so seeing one portrayed as a protagonist, let alone a sentient being, kind of just pushes my buttons. However, I think that can be attributed to the larger issue of ponies having modern technology. Episode 4 has a few bright spots worth pointing out, namely the whole moral about the superficial nature of internet clout. God, I wish Pip would get cancelled so you wouldn't have to deal with her annoying ass influencer clip trot bullshit anymore. I understand why they had her be one, because kids today need lessons that reflect the world they're growing up in, and unfortunately, that's one with social media and the internet and influencers. They should learn the difference between an internet personality that can be a positive role model versus one that's a negative role model. But fuck them kids! If they're going to dedicate time to trying to teach kids about influencers and the internet, they need to actually understand that culture. Knowing terms like shadow banned isn't enough. The real negative influencers with little kids in their demographics don't act like the Philly Four. They act just as nice or positive, upbeat, etc. as Pip in their content. And on the surface, they're all but indistinguishable to little kids. That's why they're so dangerous. Influencers in many ways are actors. They play characters in their content. It's just part of the business, if you will. I'm reading a script I wrote and then polished right now. And I repeat lines until I give a delivery I like. I add extra oomph and enthusiasm, because that's how you make your content engaging. Don't get me wrong, I don't try and act like a different person, but I'm still putting on a show, curating myself to be an effective entertainer. Because if I were to just sit in front of my camera and talk in my regular speaking voice, you wouldn't want to watch it. It'd be boring. You'd go find someone else who's more engaging. This would just put you to sleep if it was the whole video. And that's even if you are my age or older and you have a higher tolerance for less in-your-face energetic content. Little kids, like the main target demographic of MLP, they're going to want a more loud, colorful, energetic form of content. Stuff like that's on TikTok. My point is, the whole influencer thing is a complex issue. You have to be a bit savvy online because it's easy to be deceived by what you see, and learning to be critical is very much an acquired skill, one that's still fallible. I'm glad to see kids shows trying to tackle the issues that today's kids will be dealing with, but if they want to effectively do that, they need an in-depth understanding of them, when they're not sure the writers really have. I'm assuming they're millennials, so born in the 80s and 90s. They would have been adults or teenagers when early internet culture truly kicked off, if I understand my history right. And since I'm an early Gen Z, I literally just turned 26 days ago as of recording this, I was just a little kid back then. Even I didn't grow up with influencers as they are today. When I was a little kid, I watched people like Tobuscus, Smosh, Niga Higa, and Sky Does Minecraft. A few days ago, I saw a commercial for that one TikTok, Charlie D'Amelio. I had to Google her name. Her new Hulu show. Those are the type of freaks that today's kids are seeing online, and that Pip is based off of. Younger Gen Z and Gen A kids are going to be the first to really grow up with this kind of online culture. I can chance a guess at what it's like based on my own experiences with watching internet personalities as a kid, but that's just it. It's still a guess at best. How are people older than me going to fare when they haven't experienced what kids today are experiencing at that age? I'm not saying they shouldn't try. I'm just saying that this is something worth bearing in mind if they're going to try and write about it. And if they do, they should probably do more research and put a bit more into their portrayal. Anyway, M.A. Larson said he likes lines that imply life happens off screen. So when whatever this pony's name is,
hello, horse, I shall call you Burger,
says, not another one of Sonny's lost causes, it alludes to how Sonny is a neo-Confederate. I mean, to Sonny's repeatedly trying to start movements or causes in an effort to better her community. In that moment, we get to see some of the film and behind-the-scenes Sonny, and it's reassuring to know that this is a consistent part of her character. One interesting bit of analysis I saw online was that the main 5 are more like real people than the main 6. Well, of course, the main 6 were nuanced, well-developed characters. They were still based on exaggerated character archetypes. And that's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. Where the main 5 differ is in how their archetypes, with some exceptions, are less exaggerated. Therefore, they're more like real people. And I think that can be a good thing too. But on the other hand, that could lead to them feeling flat at times. The main 6 exaggerated personalities made them larger than life and engaging to watch. They are cartoon characters. Izzy, of all the ponies, has the most exaggerated personality of the main 5, and she quickly became a fan favorite after the movie came out. I rest my case. But now, with more content out, I'm glad to see how each pony is settling into their character. Their personalities are well defined and are beginning to shape the narrative. Sunny continuing to be an activist type, leader, organizer is awesome. And Pip, oh man. I thought her little exchange with Sunny at the start of episode 4 was pretty good. Sunny is quite clearly anxious about her new role as a figurehead of sorts, and with being the center of attention. Not in the sense of public speaking, but in having people actually hang on her every word and start to look at her as like a role model. Pip does know what that's like, so it's only natural for her to help guide Sunny. But Pip is a bit ditzy and doesn't really help much. It's an interesting way of showing both the positive and negative parts of her character, illustrating that she's good, but still has room to grow and mature. I know it sounds simple when it's laid out like that, and it basically is, but executing it can be very hard, as any writer will tell you. And well, yes, things are dumbed down because this is a kid's show and a show. The fact that it has these good bones is very important in the long run. Episode 5 is a bit rough. The argument between Sunny and Hitched is forced, to say the least. This is one of those times when the characters get dumbed down to create drama that wouldn't actually exist. And their resolution, when they just run into each other, then apologize and awkwardly say, let's do our secret hoof shake, and everything's all better, and that's just as forced. I'm pretty sure Friendship is Magic had a similar episode, and it was much better. This whole episode was just clumsy and again felt like a filler episode. The final cherry on top was a stupid third mystery smoothie gag. I mean, it wasn't funny, and it's dependent on Sunny adding a random plant in, which just doesn't even make any sense. Your job is to make smoothies. You should know the ingredients need to be blended to add to the flavor. Come on. One thing I really do like is that they added a new area to the Bright House at the end to fill in some of that empty space that makes me feel so ugh. Episode 6 is a great Izzy episode, and our first real Misty episode too. Okay, let's quick back it up. How are Misty and Opaline? I love Misty. She's great. She's absolutely adorable. She's the type of character I'm a sucker for. Her design is a little funky. I'm not sure I like the pink and blue, especially on her horn. It looks like a sucker. And her hair kind of makes her look lopsided. To tell you the truth, it makes me think she should be toppling over. It's just too big, and on one side of her head only. It's pretty clear her mane was inspired by black hair, And I mean, there's just so much stuff black girls can do with their hair that could have translated better into a mane than what Misty got. They could have added like 2 little poofs behind her head and still had a big, puffy fringe, I don't know, terminology for hair, bang, hanging over the side of her face like her hair does right now. Opaline is basically a generic villain, evil for evil's sake. I mean, with the exception of Discord, the real big bads of MLP were never that complex. They didn't need to be effective, and leaving them open-ended gives fan creators room to play around with them. The creativity of the Brony fandom is what makes it such a great fandom to be a part of. In my opinion, fan-created content carries the fandom just as much as the show itself does. Still, Opaline's design is a bit iffy, at least in 3D. Looking at her in a 2D style, she looks pretty good, but 3D, yeah. Her personality is pretty fun though. It's nothing new or really all that interesting to think about, but her dialogue is funny and she's fun to watch, and that's all that really matters. One thing I think could be a major boon to the show is having the villain play a larger role in the plot, as opposed to having them only appear in a single episode and then get defeated. Or maybe in the more slice-of-life episodes, we don't need a baddie messing around with things, and we should just follow the characters going about their day and doing their thing. But I think having the villain show up more regularly builds them up, and especially having them feel some of the early conflicts that the characters have to deal with. And that could make Season 1 more exciting and drive the whole magic plotline. One of my favorite things about the final seasons of Friendship is Magic was the villains. Cozy Glow is one of my favorite villains of the whole show, and the villain moments really build up their final showdown with the main 6 in the Season 9 finale. One really interesting analysis I saw was framing Opaline and Misty's relationship as a dark parallel of Celestia and Twilight, and I think there's a lot there to think about. Celestia was a supportive teacher, like a second mother figure.
I like a good cigar and a bad woman.
She let Twilight be independent and sent her out to make friends. Twilight had a supportive family and a friend in Spike, and she was hesitant to socialize, but Celestia encouraged her to. Misty is an isolated orphan who clearly wants friends, but Opaline stops her and keeps her isolated. Opaline uses her, is cruel to her, controls her, and ensures she's the only one with influence over her. It's a very interesting reversal, and if it was intentional, I think it's a brilliant way to pay homage to G4 while continuing to insert new ideas into the franchise and to make G5 more unique. And now episode 6. Man, this episode is great. Again, it's an Izzy and Misty episode. We get some awesome moments for both characters, and maybe it was just me paying extra close attention, but I think there's some really good animation moments, especially expressions. In the story time where Sunny and Misty share conflicting stories about how magic was lost, there's so much there with that bubble that they talk about. Not to mention the whole character aspect of it. But there is one gripe I have. Hitch wasn't invited to the sleepover. Now, I get that they probably left him out to avoid the whole, "Oh no, Hitch is a boy spending a night with a bunch of girls, he's gonna bang 'em" thing, but come on. I seriously doubt any kids watching this would think of that. They left him out solely for the parents' benefit, which I guess ultimately they have to appeal to the parents just as much as the kids, since the parents will be deciding if the kids get to watch it. So it makes sense, unfortunately. But I can't help but think it's unfair that Hitch be left out of what is a pretty important moment in the story just because he's a guy. Just think about what's really going on. All the friends are getting together for a night of fun and games, except for one. It's just friggin' sad. Heck, have him sleep in a separate room or downstairs, or even just have him walk home once it's time for bed. But let him be there for the fun, too. As glad as I am to see a male protagonist, and I think it's important for little kids to have heroes of both genders in their shows, I think if it will affect important moments like this, it kind of undermines the story and the character by not letting him be present for major moments. I understand the thought process behind why he was excluded, and that there's a degree of validity behind it. Nevertheless, I think it's a little old-fashioned, especially considering the target demographic is too young to understand why it would be questionable to some people. All the characters involved are adults, and this is a big one, they're all fictional cartoon horses. Episode 7 is basically Episode 6 Part 2. It's a Zip episode, specifically a Detective Zip episode, so that's always fun. I like Izzy's repeated references to jinxes, making sure that that wasn't just a one-off gag and is actually part of unicorn culture. So, more world building, and we get to see Senor Butterscotch in 3D. Yes. And Zip's funky goggles from Tell Your Tale too. Sweet. And there's this moment, which is just magnificent. God, I love Misty. The moment when Misty comes back and Opaline chews her out. The "I'm your only friend and you have nothing without me, no home, no family, no cutie mark" would have been a far better reveal for why Misty is staying with Opaline than that stupid, clumsy line in the first episode. Especially when she wipes off the cutie mark decal. That could have been a real bombshell moment. Oh, and when Misty says, "Hoof to," but Opaline cuts her off. Oh, that was good. Did I mention Misty has a drawing of Opaline in her room? Yeah, poor Misty. God, I feel so bad for her. I want her to have friends. Episode 8 is basically episode 7, part 2, episode 6, part 3, and I don't care, because it's also great. It's another Misty-centric episode. So, yeah. You can really see how devoted she is to Opaline, but how conflicted she is about what she's doing. I did hope she captured Sparky and that Opaline would kill him to absorb his life essence and power, but my unbridled loathing of Sparky actually took a back seat for a change. I enjoyed seeing him and Misty go at it, and I liked seeing Hitch as a loving father figure. And that ending, holy shit. Opaline absorbing the dragon fire, and seeing Misty look genuinely afraid, plus her "for some pony made of fire, I've never met a heart so cold" line and crying. Oh, the main five are having a good time. Ugh, that was a punch right in the gut. Poor Misty. To tell you the truth, I wasn't looking forward to this. I didn't even put the release date in my calendar like I usually do for upcoming things I'm interested in. And like I said at the start, I didn't even know it was out until I saw screenshots. But now, after having watched the season twice, I'm pumped for more! I think despite the rough launch of Make Your Mark, with the special, the iffy animation, and occasional clumsy writing, G5 has come into its own and is starting to gain its stride. Of the 8 Chapter 2 episodes, there was much more good than bad, and I think that's something to be excited about. So, stay optimistic. With that out of the way, I think I should finally get around to doing a rewrite of Make Your Mark. Boy, that'll be long. Anyways, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you enjoy my other stuff as well, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.
Feeling lucky?